Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining another one of Quest's Tuesday classes on self-directed IRA and alternative investing. We have a really great class for you today on how to start and scale a BNB business. Our speaker, MeiLani, will go over the 3 different types of BNB hosting. So really great course material for you today. I do just want to say, go ahead and leverage that chat box as we move through today's class. Let us know what questions you have. If anything comes up during the presentation, we will try our best to answer it. Anything directed at Miss MeiLani herself, please wait till the end. We will have a Q&A for you at that time. But with that in mind, we always want to start these presentations out with a short disclaimer on our educational class. First and foremost, these classes are for education only. Quest is not provided to endorse any investments, nor can we provide tax, legal, or investment advice. If you are looking for that type of material, certainly reach out to a qualified financial professional to receive it. We do put these classes on with the intent to educate investors and our clients as well on the many things that you're able to do when you self-direct your IRA. Now, for those of you who are tuning into this class or any of our classes for the first time, a little bit about who Quest Trust Company is. We are the largest self-directed IRA custodian in Texas. We have 3 offices in Houston, Austin, and Dallas, where we do put on classes across the 3. While we are based in Texas, we are not solely for Texas investors. We currently have 20,000 active investor clients across the country. So that does extend all the way into wherever you may be watching from today. Let us know where you're tuning in from as well. Let us know in the chat box where you heard of Quest and where you're watching from. Now, currently, we have 2 billion assets under our administration. This is both cash and non-cash assets. As you can see, we have about $400 million at any given time in undirected cash. This is an opportunity for those who are either looking for the investment funds for their investment that is upcoming to get in touch with these clients who have the funds and are looking for the opportunity themselves. Right now, we're sitting at about 100 employees, with about a third of those being certified IRA services professionals. This means that they are very well educated on the ins and outs of what you can do with the account. And not only that, but they have that experience with alternative investing themselves. So you can feel comfortable picking up the phone and having that conversation with any one of the 100 individuals who work under Quest's administration. Now, before you get started in any investment, what's the most important thing, whether you're on the investment sponsor side or you're the investor yourself, is the education that surrounds getting involved with these types of assets. On the Quest side, we regularly put on classes, actually twice a week, once on a Tuesday here, and then at the same time on Saturday. Again, this is every single week. Please tune in to look at and educate yourself on some of the many asset classes that we see our clients investing to on a regular basis. Now, there is one event that I think is highly underutilized, but offers quite a bit of value for those, no matter which side of the line you fall on. This is our virtual national networking happy hour. So this is going to be an online event that's hosted once a month, where we'll allow everyone in the actual webinar to pitch any investments that they may have to our audience and let them know what the ins and outs of that may look like. Or even if you're an investor with the funds, let the audience know what it is you're looking for, and you'll be able to exchange contact information with those individuals and potentially get you in contact with someone who can assist you in your investment goals. Now, with all of this being said, outside of that happy hour, we do record all of our classes and post them both to our Facebook and our YouTube page. I highly encourage you to check it out if you miss a class or just want more information about the hundreds of different asset classes that could potentially be involved with your self-directed IRA investments. I want to mention one event that's upcoming very shortly for us all. On December 9th and 10th, this is an online event. QuestCon is going to be a forecasting event where the first half, December 9th, we are going to talk about how 2022 went versus what the forecast for 2022 looked like. And then December 10th, we'll be able to deep dive into what we believe the market is looking like, is going to look like, and where that trajectory will be. This is going to involve a lot of industry experts. You'll get a lot of valuable information and education on how you can better center yourself moving into the alternative market in 2023. Certainly reach out to any one of our IRA specialists here if you want more information. You can go through our live chat on the website. This is always monitored by an IRA specialist. You can give us a call or shoot us an email. Let us know how we can help. We can certainly answer any questions for you or provide you even a more curated list of the education that you can see on our website. Now, with all of that being said, we're going to go ahead and pass this mic off to MeiLani, who is going to be talking us through the 3 different ways that you can invest into BNBs. She's very experienced herself and even has her own podcast. And I think that everyone attending here will be receive a lot of value from the information that she's able to provide if you're looking to get involved with these types of investments. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to MeiLani. Are you with us? Awesome.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we sure can.
Awesome. Well, we'll just get started. Does that sound good?
Absolutely. Feel free to jump on in.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on, guys. It's good to be here. I like how she calls me Miss MeiLani. That's so Southern and so welcoming, and it makes me just feel so good. It also makes me feel a little bit old, but I love it. Okay, so she did a great job introducing this topic. We're going to dive in a lot to Airbnb, but there's so much to cover with it that, serious, if you have questions, make sure you're putting them in the comments so that we can get to those at the end. It's also good for me to know if you do have access to the comments. If you could go ahead and type in there how many Airbnbs you have. If you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 10, and 0, maybe not yet, but you're looking to get into them, then it will help me know also how best to tailor this. But I'm super excited to talk with you guys about this topic. As she mentioned, I have been doing it for quite some time, but I wanted to give you a little bit of my background. If you were to see, my resume on my podcast or on my book or something like that, you would see a lot of this stuff, right? You would see the professional headshot. You would see that I've done rehabs and flipping. I've done new construction. I've done notes. I've done long-term rentals, short-term rentals, podcast host, author. I do coaching, all these things, right? I do keynote speaking, all these things, right? So that's this me, right? But the real me is this. This is the real me. I'm the mother of 5 beautiful young children and the wife to an amazing husband. And this is to spend most of my time. And so even though with our professional resume, we don't really get to talk about the real us very much, but for me, it's a huge part of how and why I got into short-term rentals. So I think it needs to be noted. And to get a little bit more of why I got into what I did and how I do it. By the way, I'm loving seeing these numbers come in. So thank you for Sean and Deborah for answering, and a few others. So the real me, the reason why I got into short-term rental is that of those 5 beautiful children that I have, when number 4 was 6 weeks old, number 3 on his 2nd birthday was diagnosed with brain cancer. And in a matter of minutes, our whole life changed and our whole outlook on life changed. Our life had gone from very routine, basic. We both lived in jobs that we worked in jobs that my husband liked his job. I did not love my job, and I was doing well at it and I was making good money, but I was not finding joy. And in this moment when our son was diagnosed with brain cancer and within 24 hours he was rushed in for brain surgery, it gave us a lot of time over the next few months as we were doing radiation and different treatments and going to see different specialists, that I had a lot of time to sit in dark rooms just holding my baby, that not knowing how much longer I would get to hold him, and thinking about, what am I doing? what am I doing with my life? And at this time, I was actually in a sales job, so I wasn't in real estate at all. And during this time, our family came up with 2 family mottos that kind of just naturally came out of it. The first one is, our last name is Hock, right? So MeiLani Hock is my name. And we came up with this motto of Hawks do hard things. Hawks do hard things, because it's not a matter of if hard things are going to come. It's a matter of when, right? And I want my children to understand that and realize that life is hard. It's going to be hard. But good news, we are tough and we can handle whatever comes our way. And even though this happened over 8 years ago, this motto has stayed true in our family. In fact, this one recently from my 5-year-old that wasn't even born at the time when the motto first originated. This is a video of her still using our motto because we use it often. Oftentimes I'll say Hawks do, and the kids will respond hard things. So I hope you guys can hear this as I show you. This is MeiLani and her showing you our family motto.
Okay, are you ready? Let's hear it. Hawks do. Should we do it again? Hawks do.
Hot feet.
You got this.
Maybe I don't want to do it.
Oh, honey, I'm gonna get you. I'm ready. Hawks do.
I think.
Go, 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 go.
I hope you could hear that, and I hope if you could hear it, put a note in the comments so I can see it. I love that. I love that we had this motto that has lived on, because how many times are you like this, my sweet daughter, that you're like, I got this. Well, maybe I don't really want to do it though. And we realize we do hard things, but that still can make it's still very scary along in that process, right? So I want to remind you that you can do hard things. This isn't just our family motto, but I hope you'll take it as part of your motto as well. And I love Eminem PM LLC saying, love that video. Oh, good. I'm glad you guys could hear it, because it really, every time I hear my kids say it, it warms my heart. The other thing we came up with that just kind of came out is a lot of people were saying, do you just sit and think, why me? Why did this have to happen to us? Why is this happening to our family? And the truth is I've had many times in my life that I've had why me moments. And we're going to talk a little bit about a big one coming up also. But at this point, it was kind of like, if you've ever seen the movie Incredibles, and if you have young kids like I do, you've seen it many times, right? But if you think of Violet, who is one of the daughters that's able to put like a bubble around their house and around their family. And for us during that time, we had this cool bubble around us. And so instead of saying, why me? Why me? Why did God or whoever you believe in let this happen to us? Instead, we think, why not me? Why not me to have these trials so that I can become the person that God or whoever you believe in needs you to become? And so our family started saying, why not me to do great things? Why not me to do hard things? Why not me to whatever it is? And so I invite you to take on these 2 family mottos and come into my family and be a part of our family and take these 2 mottos to heart of, you can do hard things, and why not you? If you see something on social media or something, why not? Maybe people are traveling. Maybe people take a perfect Sunday selfie, whatever it is. Why not you? If that really is important to you, why not you to chase that dream? And why not you to overcome the trials that might come along that path? So anyways, I, at that time, went to my husband, and we had been going through months and months of radiation treatment. And I remember going to my husband and crying, because I'm a crier, and saying, honey, I just can't sit around and wait for him to die anymore, because that's what I felt like I was doing. Now, my son, his brain tumor was attached to your brainstem, and your brainstem is what controls your breathing and your swallowing, which are pretty vital parts, right? And so we've gone through all these specialists and everything. And I had been let go of my job because I had taken so much time off to be with my son, and just my life was just I don't know. I just went from one doctor's appointment to the other, and I just kind of felt like a zombie, and I needed something to re-engage my creative side and give me a sense of purpose. And so I said to my husband, I said, honey, you know how when we were dating, we used to talk about all the things we were going to do someday, and we were going to have a big family, and we were going to be like, my husband wanted to be an options trader, and we would read Robert Kiyosaki books, and we were going to become real estate investors, and this and this and this. And I was talking about all these things. And I was like, you remember all those things we talked about? Crazy idea. What if I did one of those? What if I actually did it, right? And good news, guys. We had been really good at the making a big family one. We're kind of pros at it. So we were good at that one, but all of those other big dreams had kind of gone to the wayside with every beautiful child we were blessed with. And it's almost as if we were choosing to be responsible like the rest of Americans around us. And we had to get a stable job and this and this and this. Now, I'm not knocking on stable jobs, okay? There's beautiful things of 401ks and health insurance and stuff. So I'm not telling you all to go leave your jobs. But for us, there was something that I needed to explore. I needed to explore out there. So I said, I'd like to start that house flipping company that we've always talked about. Like, I'd like to start investing in real estate. And he's like, well, honey, we kind of have a lot on our plate right now. But if you really want to do this, then I believe in you. And I'm so lucky to have an accountability partner and business partner and best friend and husband that said that, because I did. And I went out and I started Hock Homes. It was our first real estate investing company. And I was super excited. And I set these big goals of I was going to flip 7 houses my first year, even though I had 4 young children. And I was going to do a few other things and got really excited about it. And I went out and I did those things. And I did them kind of awesome, guys. Like, it was awesome. The only problem was that I found myself once again trying to figure out that balance or that harmony between my life, my personal life, and my work and my career, and trying to figure out how to balance those things. Because sometimes I'd want to be at watching my kids' soccer games or coaching my kids' soccer games on Saturdays, but instead I'd have to go work on projects and make sure my contractors were working on different projects and stuff. So I was always worried that I was going to just ruin one of those things, whether it was work or life. And I was having a struggle with finding that balance. Well, as great as renovating homes and flipping homes, whatever you call it, whatever HGTV show you watch calls it, I guess, then I loved it. I loved it for years, and it was great. And we were making good money, and it was awesome. It was awesome. But then one year, all that changed. And I had major burnout. And I could go on and on talking about this really crummy year that we had. But let me just give you a little glimpse, okay? We had 2 different drive-by shootings, 20 miles apart from each other, happen within 2 weeks of each other, one of which we had taken pictures on a Tuesday because we were supposed to list it on a Friday. And there was a drive-by shooting that happened on our driveway of this brand new tear down new construction home. That there was the drive-by shooting right on our driveway, which was so terrible, like a terrible event to have happened anywhere for sure. And how the events that usually happen after this type of thing is it starts as like one candle. And then it becomes more candles, and then it becomes flowers, and then it becomes signs. And so right there on our beautiful home that we were going to be listing, this memorial was growing on our driveway. So not only was it not a great time to sell a house. Okay, first off, let me just acknowledge that so sorry for that family. He did end up surviving, but still such a terrible event to have happened at all. But there was no way I was going to go to the family and say, so sorry for your loss. Is there any way I can help you move this to somewhere else? Right there. I mean, there's no way I could say that, let alone everybody else who's been driving by looking for houses. There definitely is a stigma around that house, right? There's all sorts of different things. We had flooding at 3 of our properties within 6 weeks because the plumber had used the exact same floor plans, but had cut the pipe 1/4 of an inch too short on all 3 of the houses. And so these brand new houses got flooded. We were in a terrible lawsuit with one of our general contractors who I thought was like a brother, and we had worked on 12 properties together, but had been lying about certain things. And in a terrible, nasty, like divorce with our general contractor. And during this time, it got so bad that we thought that 6 of these properties, brand new constructions, were going to go on the market in June or July. And instead we got in this nasty lawsuit, and I wasn't allowed to do anything with them for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. And it was terrible. Now, if you know anything about flipping houses, a lot of the time you use private lending. And so at this time I was leveraged about $4 million, and I was paying my lenders anywhere from 10, I was at like 10, 11%. But that was a lot of extra holding a cost that I hadn't planned on. And there was a lot of these things that's coming up that I thought that this flipping houses was where I wanted to be. And lots of people seem to be doing it and doing it well. But for some reason, I feel like, again, I don't want to offend anybody's beliefs, and I hope you aren't offended that I'm going to share mine, but I feel like God was like pushing me, like, oh, you think this is all you need to do, but I have more that I need you to learn and more to do. And he was forcing me to get out of flipping houses. It's almost as if I had talked about climbing this big mountain for years. I'd been reading the books. I'd been going to all these classes and trying to learn. I'd started even paying coaches, but I still hadn't done anything, right? And eventually it's like, we're doing this. We are all in. We are doing this. And so we started to climb. And as I was climbing this mountain, I didn't get to the very top. I'm not going to pretend like I'm Joanna Gaines or anything like that. All right. So I wasn't at the very top, but on my way to the top and starting to get a sense of that view, I realized it was a beautiful view, but it wasn't exactly what I had hoped for. There was something else, and there was something missing. And then during that beautiful hike, all of a sudden this avalanche came out of nowhere. When things were going well with flipping houses, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, I just felt like I was in this really dark place. I was in this really dark place that it sent me into a very deep depression. And I spent many, many hours in my dark closet, curled up in a ball, just crying, because I didn't want my kids to hear me cry. Because at this point, being leveraged $4 million and having no idea when I was going to get these properties back, we were on the verge of losing our home, all of our rental properties for sure. Like it was a very, very dark time. And for some reason, I had felt so inspired to go do this and start this business. And I thought I was living my dream and my best life. But all of a sudden, I was in this dark place. And I had to figure my way out. I had to figure it out because I couldn't, for the sake of me and my kids and my husband, not to mention all my lenders that I loved, and I wanted them to be able to still trust me. I had to figure out a way out of this avalanche. So I could do what all the YouTube videos that pump you up, like when things get tough, just get tougher and just climb up. You just dig yourself out and just keep going at it. And I could have done that. But guys, I was burnt out. And I'm here to say that sometimes you don't have to push through. And sometimes those are a sign it's time to pivot. I hope I don't offend anybody out there, but sometimes that's a sign of there is something else out there. And for me, I felt like I didn't want to climb back up that mountain because I had been so hurt by it. Maybe someday I will again, but I was not interested in flipping another house. So that was option 1. Option 2 was I could dig myself out of the avalanche and I could go down to the bottom. I could just give up on the mountain. Maybe the mountain wasn't everything I thought it was going to be, right? I thought everybody had told me about the great view, but they forgot to tell me about the blisters and the heat stroke and all these other things, right? So I could just give up and go to the bottom of the mountain and just go walking along. Who needs hiking anyways, right? But I was so close to this one, you guys. I was so close. But sometimes I would just wonder if I got off the mountain, would I ever get back on this mountain or any mountain ever again? And I don't think I would have. So I was so scared to go back up to the top, and I knew I didn't want to do that. I was so scared to go back to the bottom because I didn't want to just be trapped and never take risk ever again, especially in real estate, because I knew there was money to be made in real estate. And this is when me and my husband really had to take a step back of what does our dream day really look like? What does our dream life really look like? And we made this long list of a bunch of things. We wanted to travel the world with our kids. We wanted to spend more than 3 hours a day with our kids. We wanted to coach their sports. We wanted to be able to live our lives from anywhere off of passive income if we wanted to. We wanted, all of these different things that we had talked about. And it all boiled down to the fact that I wanted to build a life that I didn't want or need a vacation from. And to do that, I knew that I needed an additional stream of income as passive as possible. It didn't have to be 100% passive because at that point I was pretty well into debt. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to just flip a switch and go 100% living off of passive income. I had to be able to figure out how that was going to look. So a semi-passive stream of income. And I wanted to use all the things that I had learned. There had to have been a reason that this avalanche came out of nowhere. And it was at this point that I started to realize that this avalanche had actually created a bridge. This avalanche had to happen for this bridge to be created, for me to be able to go and see all the other things of real estate investing and just investing in general and life in general that would allow me so many more views that I didn't even know existed for me. And as I started to go out on this new bridge, all of these doors opened up. All of these different things, these views that I had never even dreamed of came up. And for me, my bridge was short-term rentals, or Airbnbs, as we're going to call them in this. And the short-term rentals, I could still use all the things I had learned. I could use my yellow letters. I could use my creative financing. I could use all these different things that I had learned in my years of climbing the mountain. But then now I could take them and I could go out and see so much more. So that was how I got on my path. Now, the path to your Airbnb success has lots of different steps on it, right? There's lots of different things that are going to go into it, and we're not going to have time to talk about all of them. But if you have questions, make sure you're putting them in the comments and in the chats so that we can get to them at the end, because we're going to do our best to go through a bunch of different things, but we're not going to have time to show you everything. All right. But my goal is to help you understand the basics overview. And just a disclaimer, they already talked about a disclaimer. Your success is up to you. The things I'm going to talk about are successes of ours or from my students across the country. And so, but your success is up to you. And because we really do want to turn you into Airbnb superheroes, not necessarily super hosts, because it's not always that important to be a super host, but superheroes, definitely. Now, I do want to point out, because I sometimes forget and I get so caught up that I forget to say that AJ, my brain cancer miracle, is alive and well and funny and smart. You guys, he's so smart. I remember sorry, I'm going to digress a little bit. We still have got some time. I remember sitting in the doctor's office when they were about to take him into surgery, and them saying, now you have to sign all these things of this might happen, this might happen. And at this point he was walking, but he wasn't really talking, right? It was on his second birthday. So, but he had the best laugh. He had the best laugh ever. And I remember just thinking, am I going to be able to hear my baby laugh again? And they had warned me, we are pretty sure, like, that we think this is, but here are all the things that could happen. He could probably go to community college someday, but he probably will need like special help because he won't be able to remember to take his books and stuff like that. And they told me all these things that were probably going to happen. Well, you all, my son is a little miracle, and I do not take that lightly. He is the only surviving member of his graduating class from the Ronald McDonald House. And I am very grateful for the reminder every day to not take that lightly, but to live life to the fullest. And we just got his state testing back for math, you guys, and he tested in the 99th percentile. We like to joke that it's kind of like Spider-Man, that his radiation actually just made him super math smart. So love that. And so grateful for that. My point to share all of this, right, is that you can do hard things, and why not you? So let's get into the actual Airbnb portion. I hope it's okay that I shared my story, but I think sometimes we just need to be real. And sometimes when you're in real estate, you see a lot of people out there and they're they're showing you their Rolexes and their Lambos, but sometimes they don't get real and remind you that it is hard. It is hard. But if you have a path and if you have a goal and you keep working towards that goal, I promise you, the story gets better. Okay. So today we're going to talk about a few different things. First, let me just rewind. Okay. So little Lonnie was so excited to get into real estate investing. I had read books, all these things, and I was like, honey, I'm going to do this. I'm starting my company, right? And I went to lots of different conferences, and I went to one conference in particular that I remember them talking about, okay, all you got to do is just passive income, right? And passive income, the way you get passive income is you become a landlord. And at this time, the national average for a traditional long-term rental was to net each month was $300. And so I was like, okay. So at this conference, they said, so just figure out how much you want to make per month and then figure out how many long-term rentals you need to open. And so I was like, okay, well, okay. If let's say I wanted to make 150,000 a year, let's just say that as a good starting point. If I wanted to make 150,000 a year in my long-term rentals, how many would I need? Okay. And I started counting them up. And after this conference, I even started going out and doing this and getting my first rental. And they made it sound so easy. But y'all, after you get the first one, you got to find money to put a down payment on the second one and then the third one. And then if you keep on going, like my number, all of a sudden it's like, oh, they made it sound so easily, but all I really needed to do was, just 41 traditional rentals to get $150,000. And they had made it sound like, oh, that's all you do. Then you just go get another one. Then you just get another one. Y'all, that is hard. And if you're on this call, I know y'all have an opinion on investing and have probably tried this. And that is hard to just keep on buying properties, right? So I had to find a different way than that, because that was not going to just magically happen. Well, at this time, this was back in 2017 when short-term rentals were on the up and up. They weren't anywhere where they are now. In fact, if you do a little research on Airbnb, I believe, I can't remember if it's 2014 or 2015, that Airbnb still didn't let you rent out beds. It had to be an air mattress. That's where Airbnb comes from. In fact, if you read books about them or anything, there's stories of hosts that asked, I don't have an air mattress, but I have an extra bedroom. I actually have 2 extra bedrooms. Can I just let people stay in there? And at that time, like 2014, they were still so young and naive in their business that they said no. But what you could do is get an air mattress and put it on top of a bed. Guys, that was less than 10 years ago. That's how baby and infant this industry is. Okay. So in 2017, I was like, a lot of people are talking about, like, what if this crazy Airbnb thing really takes off? How about that? Because while I was in my avalanche, I was desperate for anything. And so I was like, you know what? I am jumping in and I want to open my first 4 within 3 months. I didn't do it, but I did my first 4 within 4 months. And when I say Airbnb today, I just want to make sure that we know that I'm just talking about any short-term rental. Okay. Airbnb is kind of like tissue or Kleenex. It doesn't really mean just that brand. It just means short-term rentals. And that's just kind of a word we use for it. So as I say Airbnb, please know I don't mean just that platform. All right. There's lots of different platforms out there for short-term rentals, but sometimes I'll call it an Airbnb. But when I do say Airbnb, I want you to think about what you actually picture, because there's so many different things out there. Sometimes we just picture like a vacation rental by the beach, or we picture just basic, but here are some of my favorites that you can find on Airbnb. So what do you picture when you hear Airbnb? Here's romantic bus in the forest, dome in the forest, clock tower guest suite, secluded in-town treehouse, dog bark park inn, and RVs that are going for $236 a night in Los Angeles with a wonderful view, but it's still an Airstream, y'all. And hammocks that don't even have a bathroom that can go for $25 a night. How crazy is this industry? How awesome is this industry that you get to be as creative as you want? Now, let me just tell you things that I look for in a property. Now, a lot of time people will say, oh, I've been wanting to get into short-term rentals, and they are thinking vacation rentals, which is a great niche. I'm not saying don't be in that niche. It's not the one that provided my bridge. My niche Was not, none of my properties have, well, I shouldn't say that because we do now have more vacation rentals. But when I first started, my first 15, 20 properties did not have any lakes, beaches, palm trees, nothing. I looked for airports, hotels, universities, and hospitals. Those were my 4 things that I looked for. And if a property had 2, 3 of those within 15, 20 minutes, oh goodness, yes, I wanted it. If it had all 4, like, yes. Okay. If the numbers made sense, then yes. Okay. Now there are also Airbnbs out in the country that you can do. There's lots of different options out there. But for me, my niche, just so you know, is this. This is my recipe for success. But there's lots of different things within Airbnb. Lots of my students have lots of different types, but I just want to make sure you know that the options are endless in this. Okay, so let's get into the 3 types of Airbnb hosting. We have ownership, arbitrage, and co-hosting. Now, when to do ownership, I, as you can tell from my story, am try to do the least risk possible. The least risk possible. So there's no way that if I was your coach, I would ever say, yeah, just go buy a place and we'll see if it works out. No. Okay. You've got to have a plan B because there are so many things that could come up that we want to make sure that you're doing it as smart as possible. So if you already have a place and you just want to test it out, but you know it's already performing well as like a long-term rental or as a vacation home, or maybe it's inside your home, maybe it's a basement, maybe it's a guest house, something like that. Maybe you have a long-term rental that you want to test as a short-term rental. Maybe you do have a favorite lake house or something that you want to buy a house at, but you're going to use it for yourself, but you just want to see if it's possible. Then I would do ownership. Or if you've tested the neighborhood, and as soon as I have an Airbnb that's performing very well, then I try to buy up or rent up that whole cul-de-sac or that whole street, because I know if it's doing well, I want to do more like them. And there's a chance that you can get more people that are liking, you can rent it out for corporate retreats or different options if you're getting multiple houses in the same cul-de-sac, if that makes sense. So once you've tested a neighborhood, then yes, you can go and buy up the properties around it if you know it's doing well. All right. This also gives you an opportunity because if you've tested one property that it's doing well for occupancy, the neighborhood's okay with it, the going rate, all of those things, then I would do ownership. But in all other cases, I would do other people's property. All right. So sometimes we talk about using other people's money. Well, now we're talking about using other people's properties. And both of those, arbitrage and co-hosting, are using other people's property. And it starts out the same. Now, why would I want to do this? Because there's no big down payment. Remember when I started an Airbnb, I didn't have the money for a big down payment. And so I had to get creative. I had to get really creative because at that time, my credit was like on the verge of good, but I knew it was going to maybe get bad. And so I was like, got to figure out maybe not having great credit, not having any liquid funds. How can I still do this? Right. So also when you're doing other people's properties, it gives you a chance to test the property, to date it before you commit to marrying it. So you're going to find out all of its quirks. You're going to find out if it snores at night, if the house makes a funny noise, all these different things. You're dating it before you commit to marrying it, because my goal is if a property is doing well, then heck yeah, I want to buy it. But why not test it first? How cool would that be if you could do that with your personal home? I do, especially in this market, right? I do like your home, but can I just rent it for 6 months or a year first, and then I'll decide if I really want to buy it? How great would that be? Guys, you can do that with short-term rentals, and it is awesome. So again, you're going to test it. You're going to test the location, neighbors, the rates to make sure it's going to make as much as you want it to make. You're going to test all the major fixes. Maybe the roof or the HVAC has a little bit issues. If you know you're about to offer to buy this property from the landlord, it gives you a chance to say, hey, can we have the air conditioning checked because the la la la. How awesome is that? So awesome. Now, with both of these, using other people's properties, it starts out the same. There's a house, there's Mr. Landlord, and maybe he puts it up for rent, or he wants to figure out a stream of income with it. And here I come with my gaggle of children, and I say, hey, this house is perfect. It's exactly what we wanted. It's exactly what we've been looking for. And oh my goodness, I promise I'm going to keep it so clean. I am going to keep it in 5-star status at all times. And we're going to have it cleaned professionally multiple times per week or month. month. And we can use your own contract, but we just have to make sure that we attach an addendum to it. So you're planting little seeds. You're not coming quite out. I like to say be 100% transparent with your landlords, just not necessarily upfront about it. And what I mean by that is, yes, you are going to tell them exactly what you plan to do with it, but don't lead with that. Don't be like, hey, can I turn your house into an Airbnb? Because a lot of them are just going to shut down right there. All right. So you come in, you talk about, you drop little things of 5-star status. Why would they use that terminology? Oh, what would that addendum be about? And that sparks little questions, but you're raving about how perfect it is and exactly what you want it to come out. Okay. So make sure that you have an addendum. No matter which one you do, if you're doing this, make sure you have an addendum. All right. And if you go to any coach, me, any other coach, they will have an addendum for you. If you go to an attorney, you have an attorney draw one up for you. You need to have an addendum to your contract, no matter what. So let's go through the differences between arbitrage and co-hosting. All right. So arbitrage is basically subletting. Okay. So you sign a traditional lease, whether it's 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever you do, you sign it. You're going to pay monthly. You're going to set up your bill pay, and the same rent goes out every single month. You sign a regular contract. The landlord, who has been trained, must have renters. They are going to love you because there's a chance you might be the last renter they ever have. And I use that in my pitch. And I say, I hope that I'm the last renter you ever have on this property, because if and when you ever decide to sell, I want to be the one you sell it to. All right. So this is just a traditional rental. You rarely see or talk to your landlord. I send mine a box of chocolates every year. So a very traditional rental, except for on their end, it's a little bit different because you pay on time. You're going to keep their property really clean. If you've ever been a landlord, put in the comments if you've ever been a landlord, and especially if you've ever had your houses trashed. I've had to evict people before. I've had to spend $30,000 on redoing the house to get the next renter in so I could make my $300 to $500 per month or whatever it was, right? And so all of these different things, right? So traditional rental is an arbitrage. Okay. Whereas co-hosting, they have a little bit more of an investor mindset because they're going to have some bad months. They're going to have some good months. And the reason why I say that is because theirs is arbitrage is based on regular monthly rent, but co-hosting is based on the percentage of revenue. Okay. So it's almost like just a management, just like if you had a long-term rental, you'd have a property management company. That's what co-hosting is, but we don't call it short-term rental property management. You can, but you need to research if you can call it that, because in certain states you need to have different licensing and you're not allowed to hold a security deposit. So different areas are different of if you actually are allowed to be a property manager or not. So we call it co-hosting, and it's where you manage or host their property for them for a percentage of the revenue. Just another thought, if you are working with somebody who's used to having a property manager and you somehow get connected directly with them, then you might even want to pitch it as, yeah, and it's with free management because we will handle all the management for you. Now, if you're talking to a property manager, you definitely don't want to say that, because then all of a sudden they're like, well, why would we tell our landlord about that? Because then you're going to nix us out of the deal, right? So figure out who you're talking to and make sure that you're having the best pitch for whatever that type of landlord is. All right. Another difference is, well, we had that one twice. That was really important, I guess. Arbitrage. Usually with arbitrage, I buy the furniture, and usually oftentimes for co-hosting, you have the owner pays for the furniture. Now you can decide if you're going to buy the furniture or if they're going to buy the furniture. I've had terrible experiences of having them buy it. So I highly recommend you give them a menu. Here are 3 king beds you can choose from. Here are 3 couches you can choose from, because sometimes landlords they don't have good taste, and it's not going to be appealing to it. You're not going to make the most money possible if they went to Goodwill and got a couch or their artwork or whatever, right? But the good thing about this is, again, it's kind of like a marriage, and if you're dating and in this situation and you've put your furniture in, and let's say you're co-hosting, but you've put your furniture in, because you can choose if you want to buy it or not. If it's your furniture and you've paid for it because you had the money to, or you felt coming on 0% or something like that, because you're going to pay it off within 6 to 9 months. We like all of our properties to break even within 6 to 9 months. Long story short, so if you offer to buy the furniture for a co-hosting, that's great, because then it makes it even harder for them to ever get rid of you, because they're like, if I wanted to break up, oh, they've got the nice TV. They've already taken the professional pictures. They've already furnished the whole place. So if you want to make sure that you're in there, but you still have the power, if you decide to break off the co-hosting agreement, you can still take that furniture and go to another property. So, but my point with co-hosting is co-hosting you can do with no money at all, because they're going to keep paying their mortgage. They're going to keep paying the utilities. They're going to pay for the furniture. So you can do co-hosting with zero money, which is pretty darn awesome, right? Arbitrage, you usually buy the furniture, you pay for first and last month's rent, still very doable, and you can set up a beautiful property with $8,000 to $15,000, which you will hopefully break even within 6 to 9 months, depending on the property. That's our goal, breaking even within 6 to 9 months, and then you get to keep everything after that, right? Hopefully that makes sense. So people are going to say, which one is better? And it totally depends. It depends on your location. It depends on your phase of life. It depends on if you have the money or if you have the credit to go getting furniture and everything like that. I would say about 40% of it, we put on a 0% furniture credit card or some sort of 0% credit card. And so you don't necessarily have to have $15,000 sitting around or $8,000, depending on the side of the house. But you do need to have maybe access to credit or something like that. But knowing that you're not going to go buy a boat or anything like that with the credit, you're going to invest it in your business, and then this Airbnb will pay it back. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, let's run through a couple examples, and then we're going to take questions. Here is a snapshot. Now on Facebook, because we have said the words Airbnb, right? The Google gods have heard us. And so you're going to start getting targeted with all these ads. That's just how it works. And you'll see all sorts of, if you haven't already, all sorts of coaches out there with any type of real estate that will show you real estate or any type of investing. Maybe it's a Walmart store that they want you to open, or something like, look how much money I made in August of 2021, $43,000. Y'all, you are better than that. Do not fall for this. Do not be excited by this, because you have to know how much they spent to get this $43,000 before you get excited. Okay. So let's walk through that a little bit. And let me just give you the updated one. This is August 2022. This one is $58,000, but that's because we added another property in here. So the first one I think had 13 properties. This one had 15 properties. And this is all from just, August. So very recent. This is from August 2021. You'll see right here that it had a 94% occupancy rate, because 2021 for Airbnbs was hot, super hot, super, super hot. Well, August 22, we've dropped down to 82%, but don't be afraid of that, because our occupancy rate is 82%, but our average daily rate, or our ADR, has gone up exponentially as well also. So let's break that down even a little bit more. Here's an example of one of our properties. Very simple, right? There's no palm trees. There's no beach. There's no dog bark park in, right? It's not one of those super creative ones. It's very basic, because I look for airports, hospitals, hotels, right? And universities. Those are the things that I look for. So very basic, very, very basic. But if you go inside, you'll see that we've created a nice space, a nice welcoming home. This is a 2-bedroom townhome, nothing fancy, nothing over the top. And here are some numbers for you. Okay. Now I know some of you, and depending on what area you're in, it's hard to find rents like this, but we're going to see another one as well. And I promise you, wherever you are, you just got to look for the right ones that the numbers make sense. So this one I am renting, it's $1,200. So this is an arbitrage, just to clarify. This is an arbitrage. I rent it for $1,200. This is taken an average over 3 months. Cleaning is $320, utilities $220, fees are $200. So total operating cost of $1,940. Total operating cost of $1,940. And the revenue on this one is $3,605. And we take out that operating cost, and the net earnings is $1,665 per month. Now, I will be honest with you, this was taken from August 2021, and we reran the numbers, but we didn't have a chance to upload the slides yet. So just so you know, the updated as of this month's, of the last 4 months, is because they did raise the rent. Okay, after 2 years, they raised the rent, and so the rent went up a little bit. So this, on this property, the average for the last 3 months was $1,200 that we netted on this property. So yeah, our margins did get a little bit smaller, but we're still making 12. Well, the average actually was 1201. Does anybody remember what were we paying in rent on this property? 1,200, right? So technically we're still making $1 more than the landlord, who, if the shower breaks, if the air conditioning breaks, if anything breaks, they have to pay for it. We're making just as much as the landlord is, even after all of our expenses. How cool is that? How cool is that, right? Okay, here's another property. And the rent on this one is $2,500, and this gives us operating costs of $36.95. And our revenue on this property is almost $7,000. Take out that $36.95, and the net earnings on this one, and this one's up to date, is $3,265. So again, how much was I paying in rent? $2,500. And we're making, after paying all of our expenses, we're making $3,265 per month on that. Now, just a note, aside from the actual payment of the properties, you will have like insurance that you need to pay, your annual liability insurance, and there are a couple other costs, but for the most part, you can see that this is good stuff, y'all. Now, remember that back at that conference when I figured out I was going to have to get 41 long-term rentals? Well, what if you applied that same principle to this? And instead of, we'll just kind of round down just to throw some money at our insurance and other things, right? So that first one I showed you was netting $1,200. So let's round it down. We'll say, what if we got 4 properties that were netting $1,000? That would give us $48,000 per year. And then if I got 3 that were making 3,000, even though ours was higher than that, but just for the sake of this, then that would be 108,000. And so that, with only 7 short-term rentals, instead of 41 long-term rentals, that with 7 short-term rentals, we could be making $150,000. Now, granted, this is semi-passive. It's not something that you hand off necessarily. You can hand it to somebody like us that co-host property, or lots of people across the country that now co-host or manage your short-term rentals. You won't make as much, but you'll still make good money, right? So you've just got to figure out for you, what does that really look like, right? Is it worth the extra time and effort? But is it so awesome that you can do this and make $150,000 with just 7 short-term rentals, or 10 or 15? Figure out what your numbers are and figure out how many you need to get there. Now, I'm just going to kind of skim through this. One of the other things that we don't have time to talk about, but is also house hacking. If you've heard of house hacking, where you can rent out your own home. And when we do that, when we travel, we make 2.5 times our mortgage when we travel. So it's like we're getting paid to travel. You remember that dream I had of traveling the world with my kids? Well, now we get to do that. We get to bike the Golden Gate Bridge, go to national parks. We get to live our life from anywhere, because almost everything I do for Airbnbs, I do from my phone. My goal when I set up a property is to only have to go back as often as I want, which sometimes is every 6 months, sometimes is every year. If you've trained somebody to go in and do quarterly checks, I do recommend doing at least quarterly checks of your property. So whether you do it or you train somebody to do that. For me, I've gone back and forth at different times of my Airbnb 5-year career, that sometimes I do it, sometimes I hire that out, and sometimes I do spot checks to make sure that that person is doing what I want them to do. Also, my point being is that you can do this. You can do hard things. Why not you to do these things? Why not you? Whether it's with Airbnb or whatever it is, why not you? Now, how do we do it? It isn't the force, my friends. It is that we follow a path. We follow and we create systems, and we set up systems so that we can cross that bridge and see all the other things out there that we have in store. And so, I think that's all, but let's go to questions. I hope we covered lots of good stuff. And if you have more, if you think of other questions after that, then definitely reach out to me either on Instagram, or you can shoot me an email at MeiLani at Why Not Me Airbnb. But Instagram also, I would love to see you over there. My main account actually, because this is actually just one of my streams of income, right? I coach on this, I run Airbnbs, but I also am a keynote speaker. You can maybe tell that I love speaking. But I love doing corporate trainings and doing keynote speaking. So if you go to my personal page, it actually doesn't talk very much about Airbnb, but you can contact me there. We also have Why Not Me Academy as well, but you can contact me there. So let's see, what questions do we have?
There is one from Sean here. We just put it up on the screen for you. This was a little bit towards the middle of the presentation. So what is in the addendum?
Great question, Sean. There is, it's got all the legal jargon, right? The biggest, most important thing in there, because I think it's 5 different points, but the biggest, most important thing you need in there is a way to get out. A way to get out of this contract. Sometimes that might look like 60-day notice, 90-day notice, 30-day notice, that you're allowed to give that 30 or 90-day notice, or 2 months rent, or whatever it is, whatever you feel comfortable with. How risky are you willing to be with this? But you definitely don't want to have to finish out a full year. For instance, let me give you an example. And this was in the early days, but I had a property that I had just set up and it was doing really well, which I was super bummed about, because the landlord was terrible. The dishwasher broke and it took him 3 weeks to fix it, and there were cockroaches, and he wouldn't send the pest control, so we ended up having to do that, even though he said he would pay for those things. So he was just really terrible to work with, and so we ended up shutting that one down, and thank goodness we had that in our addendum, that we could just give him a 30-day notice and then be able to leave. But also, you want it to be able to protect you that way, but that they don't necessarily get to do that, because you don't want them to be able to say, oh, you know what, you need to be out in 30 days, but your calendar has been is open for like 3 months in advance. That's how much I leave my calendar open, because then you have to cancel all of those stays, and that really is bad for your Airbnb account rankings. So you just want to make sure there's a few different things in there, but the most important is that you have an out to get out of it. So hopefully that helps, John.
And your next question on the screen now from M&M PM LLC.
What due diligence do you do prior to choosing the right property? Are there specific tools you use to gauge your income? Great question. Let's see. Yes, I definitely do lots of due diligence. And I can actually walk you through, there's 2 different things. Write this down, or I can put it in the comments maybe, or somebody can do that for me. But if you do data, DATA .rabu, RABBU.com. So data.rabu.com. They have my favorite short-term rental projector calculator. Thank you guys for putting that in. So they have my favorite one that I feel like brings the best comps for you. And then you go through and you see which one actually is a comp for you, if that makes sense. And so it's a great tool. It's not perfect though. So I use it to get a general idea of what are we even talking here? And I kind of see the comps, but then I do a deep dive that takes at least an hour if you're going to do it right. And especially when you're learning how to do it. But that's when I go into the Google Maps, and that's when I go into a bunch of different things. And if you reach out on Instagram, actually, or if just reach out to me, then I can send you a link to that free webinar that walks you through exactly how I break down and analyze a property. So definitely reach out to me on email or Instagram, and I will send that to you as well. But yeah, data.rabu.com, I would say, is the best. The follow-up question to this is always, what about AirDNA? Yeah, airdna.co is good. It's good. It's not what I use to decide if I'm going to get a property. It's what I use to decide if I want to go into a zip code. Okay, so if I'm like doing out-of-state investing, then I use airdna.co just to get a rough idea. But if you think of any area you live in, you know that there are certain neighborhoods that, oh, I don't want to be there, And the same thing happens with Airbnb, right? So you've got to there is some risk involved, and you just got to make your best educated guess. But AirDNA is pulling from usually like zip code areas. When I first started, I went and looked, and AirDNA told me that I was going to be at 45% occupancy. And I was like, oh, that's not good. Like, that's not what I want. Within the first 4 months, when I opened my first 4 property, I was at 80% occupied, like automatically. So I'm glad I didn't just listen to the AirDNA and be like, oh, that's not going to happen, right? But they were pulling all sorts of different things. They were pulling people that weren't even renting out their house the full time. So that was skewing the numbers, and this and this and this. So AirDNA is a great general overview, but I really recommend getting in there and doing your due diligence heavy. Then you'll feel better about your decisions.
Thank you so much for sharing those tools. That was great. That's great information for a lot of us. We do have another question for you.
Okay.
How do you find landlords if you live in a different state to do arbitrage?
Good question. The same way. I mean, you're going to find people on Zillow, or I like to use something called PadMapper, PADMAPPER. It's got a little frog on it, PadMapper. I use both of them. But Deborah, I can answer that question, but I'm going to answer a little bit different question first. For most of my students, if it's very rare that I would recommend starting out of state. Okay. I recommend, for me personally, I like to learn by doing, and then I can train my team better out of state. And so I wouldn't recommend starting out of state, but, and even if I were to actually recommend something, I would recommend starting with co-hosting out of state, because there are lots of people across the country that they only stay in their house for 6 months out of the year, and they could use an extra few $1,000s per month, And so if they've already got a property and it's already set up, then see about maybe co-hosting those properties that are already just sitting there, right? Or their lake houses, or this, or this, or this, and approaching them about that. But then if you do want to do arbitrage, or even if you want to do arbitrage, because the main way I do arbitrage is by looking on Zillow and PadMapper for just regular landlords, you can pitch that same way. That sometimes I don't even, that I haven't even met them or anything. I just cold call them. So with arbitrage, I usually find them through Zillow, PadMapper, for rent by owner signs, that sort of thing. For co-hosting, they have a different mindset of an investor, that maybe I've met them in an investor meetup group or a Facebook group or something like that. Or they, I know that they only live there 6 months out of the year, or I see that based on, oh, they're renting it on Zillow for 6 months or something like that. So it's a little bit different type of landlord, depending on what you do, arbitrage or co-hosting. So to answer your question, Deborah, for a different state to do arbitrage, same thing, Zillow and PadMapper or whatever it is, and you would just slow approach them. But then you would have to be ready to rent it sight unseen, or you'd have to have somebody there that would go and look at the property for you, if that makes sense.
Any other questions today for Miss MeiLani? I know there's been quite a bit of information, all of which has been extremely valuable. I could speak on behalf of everyone here. Here, let me put this one up on the screen briefly before I go into that little spiel. From Deborah again, what about the states that have strict rules? What do you recommend on that front?
Okay, so if you're talking about like your Californias and your, whatever,
Mhm.
yes, then what do I recommend? I recommend, no matter where you are, make sure you know your rules. Sometimes I have students that are like, yeah, I looked into it and it's not going to work. And I'm like, oh no, why? Yeah, they require a permit. Okay, so how much is the permit going to cost? Oh, I don't know. I didn't look into it. Okay, sometimes permits are actually a great thing. It's a great thing, because then they're not going to change the legislation on you. This is such an infant industry that everybody's trying to play catch up and figure out what this means for their industry. So if you have a place that is already requiring a permit, do not get scared off by that. Figure out how much that's going to cost and put it into your cost of services, right? Usually it's just a couple $100s or something like that. Now, if you're talking about other places that are like strict, then yes, Deborah, that's when you go to the other counties, or yes, the out of state, that you might want to, and you can reach out to me for some people's contact information, but of who I recommend. Maybe you are a part investor of a bigger group, but then you still have access to getting those perks of the short-term rental income, but also you get to use them when you travel. So reach out to me if you're interested in any of that. Hopefully that helps.
Another one here for you from M&M PM LLC. We offer promo codes for any of your coaching package for those that are attended on this call live or are currently Quest clients.
Sure. Heck yeah. If you guys reach out to me on Instagram today, I will, what will I do? I will send you a link and we will set up a 15-minute phone call and we will decide what is best for you and if we're a good fit. And if so, then yeah, we'll offer some sort of discount. So reach out to me on Instagram if that's okay. Am I allowed to say that? I should have asked.
If you would remind us of your Instagram name.
Yes. So it's just my first name. It's just MeiLani Hock, MEILANIHOCK.
Perfect. That's awesome. Any other questions before we close out today's session? Okay, I'm not seeing any just yet. Did want to thank you for not only sharing your wealth of knowledge in the industry, but also your story. I know a lot of people are inspired by that, so we certainly appreciate you taking the time out of your day and providing that education and that background on yourself. It was truly a joy to be here for.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. I hope it's okay. Sometimes it takes a long time because I go off on all my stories, but I don't know. Sometimes in this industry, we just see the fun lifestyle, and I hope it's okay to be reminded that it is hard work, but it is worth it.
Well, thank you so much. And if there's nothing else from the audience, I think we will go ahead and close out today's class. As always, we thank you all so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend and learn a little bit more about things like Airbnb and alternative investing. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to MeiLani. She's very obviously educated on the topic, and I'm sure she would be very happy to help you out there. And then, of course, on the Quest side, send us an email, give us a call, let us know how we can help as well. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, guys.